Okay. Welcome, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. This is session number 6 of the California Zoroastrian Center's seminar, Liberating Zarathushtra's Relevance. And the title of this session is A Practical Mystic. We all know that Zarathushtra's main focus is on how we live our lives, day to day in practical ways that are truthful, good, generous, etc. But there is another aspect of his thought, his reason-based mysticism, which, oddly enough, is inseparable from his practical teachings. So let us first shake off centuries of mental conditioning and look at the evidence with fresh eyes. For more than 1,000 years, we have been raised with the mindset that God is a being who is inherently separate from other living things, who has always been perfect, and who created all that exists. This gives rise to some troubling questions, which are not intended as a put-down of any other belief system. These questions have troubled the minds of man for millennia. For example, if God is an inherently separate being who was always perfect, and if he created everything, where then did imperfection and evil come from? On the other hand, if God created evil, how could he be all good? And more to the point, would the creator of evil be worth worshipping? The divine that I see in the Gathas is not a being who is inherently separate from the rest of existence. Does Zarathustra specifically say so? No, he does not. But connecting the dots of what he does say, this is the conclusion I have come to. However, by the time of the Pahlavi texts, many centuries later, the notion of the divine as an authority figure, inherently separate from all the living, had taken over the mindset of Zoroastrians who wrote those texts, with some exceptions. I will not at this time go into how ancient Zoroastrians attempted to resolve the resulting troublesome questions, including their idea of cosmic dualism, the reasoning of which, with respect, is flawed, logically flawed, and is not found in the Gathas. In fact, there is no all-evil entity, the devil, in the Gathas, other than interpretations that have been read into its verses. The devil and his subordinate demons first appeared in later Avestan texts, in which the chief devil is Angramainyu, in Pahlavi texts, Ariman. Both names mean the same thing, a hate-filled, harmful, pain-causing way of being. And the subordinate demons were various human vices, as you can see. I think the devil and his demons started out in Avestan texts as a storytelling way of demonstrating that in ourselves, a harmful, wrongful way of being, the chief devil, generates all our other vices, the subordinate demons. But with the passage of centuries and military invasions in which much knowledge was lost, these allegories came to be thought of as real entities, a real chief devil and his subordinate demons. To understand Zarathustra's perception of the divine, we have to start with the mindset of his culture, because that was the mindset in which he grew up, and then see to what extent he departed from that mindset. In his culture, the deities were the spiritual essences of material things. To give you just 2 examples, there are many, many more. Haoma was both the material plant from which the drink was made, and also the spiritual essence of that plant, the deity Haoma. Mitra means contract, a material concept. In that ancient culture, survival often depended on alliances or contracts for mutual protection and even trade between families, clans, tribes. And the spiritual essence of the material contract was the deity Mitra, who personified keeping one's word, keeping the contract, not telling lies, not breaking the contract. But in these Avestan texts, Mitra was also a very cruel deity. So in the mindset of Zarathustra's culture, material things had spiritual essences, which could be a mix of good and bad, beneficial and harmful. In that culture, there was no inherent separation or disconnect between the material and the spiritual, such as we have in many of today's religious paradigms. But Zarathustra departed from the perceptions of his culture in certain key ways. He does not see the divine as multiple spiritual essences of multiple material things. I think he sees the divine as one spiritual essence of all that exists, but one spiritual essence that is wholly good. Now, existence is a mix of good and evil. So if the divine is the spiritual essence of all that exists, why isn't the divine a mix of good and evil? How did it come to be wholly good, wholly beneficial? To understand Zarathustra's answer, we have to connect some dots. Let's start with the notion of creation. Unlike the Pahlavi texts, he does not give us any creation stories, nor does he specifically state his ideas on creation. But he says things from which we can draw conclusions. He says, yes, there are two fundamental ways of being, twins, which are renowned to be in conflict. In thought and in word, in action, they are two, the more good and the bad. Yes, I shall speak out about the two primeval ways of being, of existence, of which the more beneficial would thus have spoken to the harmful. Not our thoughts, nor teachings, nor reasonings, neither our choices nor words, neither our actions nor envisionments nor selves are in accord. Now, in the first of these quotations, calling these two ways of being twins, evokes the image of these two ways of being in one container, one entity containing two ways of being. And these two ways of being are in conflict, they are opposites. Let us recall that in the Gathas, Zarathustra equates the wholly beneficial way of being with the divine, whom he calls wisdom. So I infer from these two verses, and many others, that life started out as a mix of imperfect divine qualities and their opposites. He does not say how life started. That is still an unanswered question, so far as I'm aware. Now, imagine to yourself the more beneficial part of this original being, wondering how it could change, get rid of its harmful, cruel, wrongful qualities which it did not like, so that it could become wholly good, completely beneficial. In the Gathas, the material existence, in Yasna 44 verse 7, it says the material existence was made through the beneficial way of being, presumably to accomplish this beneficial purpose. Because in the Gathas, the material existence enables the perfecting process. In connecting the dots, let me first tell you the conclusions I have drawn, mostly from the Gathas. Then I will show you some highlights of the evidence from which I have drawn these conclusions, so you can decide for yourself whether you think these conclusions are persuasive. I conclude that the original life force infused itself into every aspect of the material existence, temporarily fragmenting itself into material shells to enable the perfecting process. This accounts for the existence of evil, because the original life force was a mix of imperfect divine qualities and their evil opposites. Now, although in Pahlavi texts, the divine had become an authority figure, inherently separate from the rest of existence, they faithfully tried to record earlier traditional knowledge, but they expressed it through this later mindset. One of these texts says, "And Ormuzd produced the creatures bodily for the world. First, the sky, second, water, third, earth, fourth, plants, fifth, animals, sixth, mankind. Fire was in all, diffused originally through the six substances." Now, in the Gathas, fire is a metaphor for truth and its comprehension, which is wisdom, a wholly enlightened existence.
Thank you.
Everybody, please mute yourself. Thank you.
True, at the beginning of the evolutionary process, this fire in all things would be a bit dim, because the divine qualities in us, truth, its comprehension, its embodiment, its rule, the beneficial way of being, would still be imperfect. So I can conclude that this infusion of the original life force into every fragment of the material existence was done to enable the experiences necessary to change its wrongful preferences, so that over a long, long period of time, through an experience-based process of spiritual growth, each fragment of existence eventually becomes wholly good, personifying the true, wholly good order of existence, Asha Vahishta, which is Zarathustra's perception of the divine. In other words, think of existence as a continuum, one continuum. At the beginning of the continuum, existence is a mix of qualities that are bad and more good. And all along the continuum, fragments of existence are evolving towards a wholly good, wholly enlightened end, wisdom, Mazda, the perfected part of existence. As I understand Zarathustra's thought, the divine comprises a reuniting of all the many fragments of existence that have evolved, progressed to the perfected end of the continuum. There are many bits and pieces of evidence in the Gathas which have generated and corroborate these conclusions. Here are a few highlights. In describing the creative act, Zarathustra uses Avestan Zata words, which linguists agree literally means to give birth, to generate from oneself, thus a creation by emanation. He also uses Avestan Da words, which linguists agree means to produce, make, establish, etc. But translators have homogenized these words, translating them all as creation, which carries a biblical mindset that is different from the actual meanings of these words. Next, there is a Gatha verse which puzzled me for a long time. Here, referring to truth and its comprehension, good thinking, Zarathustra says, "Through this way of being, wisdom, thou art to grow." Does wisdom, Mazda, grow as more and more fragments of existence personify truth and its comprehension, Vahumana, which is wisdom, and thus become divine. This understanding that the divine is a union of the perfected parts of existence or fragments of existence also solves another Gatha puzzle, the way Zarathustra alternates between the singular and the plural when referring to the divine. Here are two examples. There are many, many more. By your rule, Lord, thou shalt truly heal this world in accord with our wish. Grant ye that wish for the desirable condition which is said to exist under thy rule. Do the many alternating plural and singular references to the divine, for which there is no apparent explanation, reflect a plurality of the perfected fragments of existence which have reunited to form one divine? Next, let us recall that eminent linguists have translated Harvata as wholeness, completeness, perfection. In the Gathas, this is a divine quality we are capable of attaining completely. And there are Gatha verses which imply that we achieve completeness, wholeness, and the resulting non-deathness, Amritat, individually, a wholeness of quality, and also collectively. For example, first, we earn completeness and non-deathness. Speaking of wisdom's words, Zarathustra says, those of you who shall give listening and regard to this, they shall reach completeness and non-deathness. Second, the divine gives completeness and non-deathness to us. Quote, grant thou to me non-deathness and completeness. And third, we give completeness and non-deathness to the divine. Quote, through a beneficial way of being and the most good thinking, through both action and the word befitting truth, they shall grant completeness and non-deathness to him. If the divine completes us, and if we complete the divine, would we not be parts, fragments of one completed whole? This understanding of the divine as a union of the perfected parts of existence is corroborated in another Gatha teaching. We have seen some evidence of this in previous sessions, so here I will just summarize. The divine personifies 7 qualities, and these qualities are also our path and the reward for taking that path. They are the beneficial way of being, which is the true, correct, wholly good order of existence, including factual truths and also the truths of mind, heart, spirit, soul, whatever. Its comprehension, good thinking, its beneficial embodiment in thought, word, and action, its good rule over oneself, as well as social units, its complete attainment, which brings about non-deathness, a state of being no longer bound by mortality because the perfecting process is complete, or when the perfecting process is complete. Now, if we can attain the 7 qualities of the divine completely, then only one of 2 conclusions is possible. 1, if each being is an inherently separate entity, then when each one attains the qualities of the divine completely, we would have billions of gods running around. Or 2, if existence is one unit, one being temporarily fragmented and infused into each part of the material existence to enable the perfecting process, Then, when everyone eventually attains it, these divine qualities completely, we will have one reunited being. In the Gathas, there is no evidence that Zarathustra looked forward to a population explosion of gods, the first alternative. But we do have a great deal of implied evidence, some of which you have just seen, that he favors the second alternative. In addition, he uses two beautiful metaphors. The first is the material metaphor for wholeness, completeness, harvata, which is water. Water may exist in many separate bodies, raindrops, lakes, rivers, the ocean. But when separate bodies of water are joined, the separateness no longer exists. They become one body of water. So the choice of this metaphor for wholeness, completeness, suggests a union. Similarly, in the Gathas and later texts, fire is a metaphor for an enlightened existence, the existence of the divine. And when separate units of fire are joined, they become one fire. The separateness no longer exists. So fire also suggests a union, although before we are perfected, the fire within us might be quite small and perhaps not as bright. Which brings us to the next question. This perfected divine union, is it only for human beings, or is all of existence a part of this evolutionary process? Well, many applicable Gatha verses do indeed apply to humans, but there are also many hints in the Gathas that this evolutionary process and its resulting perfected good end, the divine union, does indeed include all of existence. Here is just one. In the Gathas, Zarathustra creates, in kaleidoscopic, multi-dimensioned ways, an elaborate network of metaphors linking the divine itself and each of its 7 qualities with various material metaphors, including animals, plants, and natural elements. And we have to wonder why. We see the answer in later texts. Let me give you 2 examples. First, in both Avestan and Pahlavi texts, these texts describe the fire that exists in all things, in man, in animals, in plants, in the earth, in all of existence. And we already know that fire is a metaphor for an enlightened existence, the existence of the divine. I wish I were an artist. I would love to paint a visual image of this idea. Imagine to yourself each part of existence, trees, waterfalls, lakes, grass, flowers, leaves, animals, birds, fish, man, the earth, the sky, everything in existence, with glimmers of light within it, expressing the idea of the divine in all that exists. Unfortunately, I am not talented enough to make that kind of a painting. I just have it in my mind. Second example, the word Fravashi. This does not appear in the Gathas. It appears only in later Avestan texts. It is thought to mean the divine within, although there are differences of opinion, as with so many Avestan words. And each element of existence has a Fravashi. An Avestan text celebrates the Fravashis not just of humans, but also of other life forms as well as natural animals. Quote, tame animals, wild animals, animals that live in the water, animals that live under the ground, the flying ones, the running ones, the grazing ones. We celebrate the Fravashis. That of the sky, that of the waters, that of the earth, that of the planet.
Excuse me, please mute yourself. You're on the phone talking. Let me mute him. Dina, please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I'm
All
so
right.
sorry.
No problem, Manaz, don't worry. When I first discovered in the Gathas this perception of the divine as a union of the perfected parts of existence, my immediate reaction was negative. The idea that God, my security blanket, had to make choices too, had to go through the perfecting process in order to become wholly good, shocked me. But if we think about it, is there any merit to being perfect if one cannot ever be anything else? Is perfection worth anything if it is not earned? Once I got over my shock, I have come to appreciate that Zarathustra's notion of the divine is so much more meaningful. It means the divine itself has gone through and done what the rest of us have to go through and do. It means that until everyone makes it, no one makes it. It helps me to understand that differences of culture, language, skin color, appearances are simply the differences of our temporary material shells. There is no us and them. And it helps me to understand, although I have not yet got there. It helps me to understand that I can hate and oppose the lies and the wrongful conduct of a person, but I must not allow myself to hate the person. For me, that is really, really hard. But if I can do it, it helps to break the cycles of hatred and division that we so often get caught up in. If the divine is a part of all that exists, we cannot trash any part of existence without trashing ourselves and the divine. Now, is all this really true? Well, we cannot prove it any more than we can prove the existence or non-existence of God. But this teaching strikes a chord in me. Zarathustra's reason-based mysticism is more satisfying than any other paradigm of existence that I have come across, satisfying for me. It provides a holistic framework through which to view existence while being a part of it, so that we mutually benefit, help each other, each part of existence, while we all evolve towards the perfected end. True, it still leaves some unanswered questions, and it is not completely practical. We still have to kill to eat. Even vegetarians kill plants, but at least we can be as humane as possible. If you do not find it persuasive that the divine is a part of all that exists, don't worry about it. Zarathustra does not tell us that we should be truthful and be good to each other and heal existence because the divine is a part of all that exists. He tells us more than once to be truthful for truth's own sake, to do what is beneficial, right, good for its own sake. And he tells us to think, to decide for ourselves, so that each of us can grow spiritually in our own way, in our own time, to the certain good end that is the endless light. I used to think these ideas of Zarathustra were unique. It was only much later that I discovered that many other religions also include schools of mystical thought, although some include a mysticism that renounces the material existence, and some include only humans, whereas others include the whole of existence. I am not an expert in comparative religions, so let me simply offer you a few of the things that have come my way. In England, in the 16th century, when someone died, the church bells were rung, and people would send to find out who had died. John Donne, who lived at that time, wrote some words which Ernest Hemingway later made famous. He said, "Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind. Therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee." We find mysticism in Hindu spiritual philosophy, which includes more than just humans. Rabindranath Tagore said, "We all belong to a divine unity." And in a favorite quotation of mine, the Persian poet Jami said, "Each essence is a separate glass through which the sun of being's light is passed. Each tinted fragment sparkles in the sun, 1,000 colors, but the light is one." And indeed, a Native American wise man of the Sioux Nation called Black Elk is reputed to have said in a very lovely way, "We should understand well that all things are the work of the Great Spirit. We should know that he is within all things, the trees, the grasses, the rivers, the mountains, and all the four-legged animals, and the winged peoples." I would like to leave you with a question. Put it on the back burner of your mind and let your mind play over it. In this and past sessions, I've already given you a lot of information that may assist you in answering this question. But I would like you to experience the joy of an aha moment, a eureka moment, when you put it all together for yourself. The question is, if you had to capture the whole of Zarathustra's spiritual philosophy in one soundbite, what, in your view, would it be? I would love it if you would email me your answers. Thanks to the kindness of Sohila. Thank you, Sohila. She put my correct email address up in the chat box, which I had incorrectly put up before. So email me if you would, so that we can discuss your ideas in the next session. If you would rather I did not use your name, just email me and ask for anonymity, and I will discuss your ideas anonymously. With that, I welcome any questions that you may have. I see one from Armighty. Does non-deathness mean that we are eternal and live forever? You know, Armighty, that is really a good question. I assume it does, although I don't know. I have often wondered, you know, you have touched on something important. In most spiritual philosophies, spiritual philosophies today, the division is between this life and the next life. In Zarathustra's spiritual philosophy, the division is between mortality, continued mortality, and non-deathness. In other words, a state of being that is no longer mortal. Now, I've often wondered, assuming, well, Zarathustra does talk about the certain completed good ends. So once I get there, once I'm all perfect, what would I do? Wouldn't it be a little boring just sitting there being perfect? But I got to thinking, well, if you think of this life, it has so many interesting things in it. Everything is an adventure, sometimes of the spirit, sometimes of materiality. So maybe once we all get perfect, that would just be the start of a new adventure. So will we live forever? I don't know. Will that new adventure have its own mortality? I don't know. But it's kind of fun to think about, isn't it, RMIT? You have a good thinking mind, which is exactly what Zarathustra values. So thank you for your question. Are there any other questions? My goodness, I think I've put you all to sleep.
No, Dina, this is Sohela.
Oh, hello, Sohila. Welcome.
Thank you so much for your kind and gentle advices in regard of Ashuzarthos, gathas and the meaning of those. The subject was on the Ahriman, but and the good thought, good word, good deed, which is coming from heaven. I remember that in Iran, I'm from Iran, and in Iran, it was mandatory during the high school time that everybody has to take religion classes. Muslims, their own Quran, and because I was the Zartushti, I was going to Zartushti's high school. We had 1 hour every week that we had to go there.
You had to study Zoroastrianism or Islam?
No, we had to study our own religion.
Okay.
So I could study, and it was Khorda Avesta. My teacher was teaching us. He was not into Gatha, which eventually I continue reading Gathas and this stuff as well. But the subject that you now brought it up, of course, in a very high level, I remember that I asked my teacher when I was on grade 6. I said that if the evil is there and God is there, why God is creating evil? Not why it is like that. And his answer to me was that the human being is the last creation that God made, right? And the only difference is the power of choosing, and in that it is different between us and rest of the things. And then he told me that every human being, every child get birth with 2 energy. One is Engramenu, one is Pantomenu.
Right.
And those ones, and then in Gatha 30th, he mentioned that Ashuzarthos mentioned that listen to all words. See everything yourself, and then choose what you think you want your life to be. If you want to have a good life and be close to the God, choose Sapantomenu. Choose something that brings happiness to you and to everything around you, including animals and trees and all these things. And like that, you will be the friend with the God.
Exactly.
If you choose Engramenu, you are getting very far from God, slowly, and that is what Ahriman comes. But this energy is there. It is depend on that which one you want to choose.
Right.
If most of the people or all the people that they can choose the Engramenu, and live the life in that direction. Heaven, which was promised, is on the earth for everybody.
Good point. Excellent point. So, Hela, you have made some really, really good points, which, especially like when you choose what is good, you bring heaven on earth. You know, that is so Zarathustra, so Gathas, and thinking and deciding. You really have hit the nail on the head in so many ways. The only thing that I would wonder about is, where did Angra Mainyu come from?
Yes.
Now, I had a friend who said, oh, well, Dina, it's obvious. If man chooses evil, then the evil comes from man, not from God. But if God created, if he's separate, and if he created everything, he created man's nature. And if man's nature is a mix of good and bad, then he would have had to create bad. Zarathustra's idea that the original life force was a mix, and that through, as you said, through thinking and making choices and choosing what's good, we change the demons inside us. And I have a lot of demons, but I'm working on it. And that's how we evolve to the perfected good end, which is wisdom. So that explanation to me makes more sense than anything else I have heard. For me, I cannot just, quote, believe. I have to find it persuasive, find a belief persuasive. It has to be reasonable. But that's just me, you know, and everyone has their own ways, so don't worry about it if any one of you, if you think differently. So Sohila, thank you for your comment and your question. And you really, really highlighted some very lovely things. So your teacher must also have been a very good soul who understood Zarathustra's teachings.
Thank you kindly I'm really thankful, appreciating that in a very high level, now you are discussing that Angra Mainyu.
Yeah.
Or why the Angra Mainyu is created. And that is why I'm really delighted to listen to you. Thank you kindly. God bless.
And Sohila, you talk about me being kind, but you were so kind. There I was trying to figure out how to correct my mistake, and you just put my email address right there without even my asking. So thank you so much. Is there another question? Go right ahead.
Yes, Dina.
Hi.
Hi, Dina. This is Darius, Captain.
Hi, Darius. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I have a question. If we assume that there is one spiritual being whom we call Ahura Mazda that created the universe and everything in the universe, my question is that the universe is now supposed to be over 13 billion years old. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and the modern form of humans are only 200,000 years old. Current form of civilization is about 6,000 years old. My question is there any explanation in the Gathas as to why Ahura Mazda waited that long to create human beings?
See, the whole thing is, we don't know what that original life force was. We just know it was a way of being. That's the only way it is identified. So we cannot assume that original life force was, quote, human, you know. I really don't know. When I think of the billions of stars and think of the billions of stars just in our galaxy, the Milky Way, which is just a very small galaxy in the universe. And now they're talking about more than one universe. I really cannot even begin to speculate. But what I can do, what I like about Zarathustra, is he shows me a framework for viewing my existence here in the 21st century, and when he was alive, you know, many thousands of years ago. And this framework for viewing existence is essentially benign, which I love. And this framework for viewing existence doesn't reject anything or anyone. It understands that we all have good and bad in us. We're all working towards the good end. And he shows us how to get there. I don't know. I think essentially it has changed my life. I'm a lawyer, retired, and I used to be very confrontational, you know. It was them against us type mentality. And Zarathustra has completely changed that for me. It's still not easy for me, but I'm getting there. That's all I can say. So perhaps the value of Zarathustra's thinking is that he gives us a path. And the beauty of it is, by encouraging us to search for truth ongoing, it's a path that can never become obsolete. Because as we discover more truths, we incorporate that into the framework he has given us, which is essentially, as Sohila said, use your mind and choose what is good and what is true and what is right. I'm sorry, Darius, I don't have a better answer for you. So, well, let me see now. I have to see what other. Oh, Esfandiar, I'm so glad, but you know, this is brilliant, you say, but this is Zarathustra, it's not me. I just stumbled onto his thinking quite by accident. So it would be wrong for you to think that, you know, ascribe his thinking to me. I'm not wise enough to come up with these ideas, but I agree with you, Zarathustra is brilliant. Tana Sunabala. Would you call our religion more of a spiritual religion, one of free will? Yes. In fact, I like to call it a spiritual philosophy. But man is a social animal, right? We seem to need, some of us seem to, more than others, seem to need the activities that bring us together in times, in good times, in times of grief. So that brings us to the rituals and to the festivals and things like that. But in the Gathas, a spiritual philosophy, I would agree, Tanas.
Thank you, Dina. Wonderful answer. Thank you.
You're welcome, sweetie pie. Esfandiar, lots of questions here. Good, Esfandiar, 3 cheers. You mentioned 7 characteristics of Aramazda. Can you list them? This sounds like the Buddhist 7 levels of enlightenment. Any similarities? Well, the 7, first of all, not everyone agrees that Spenta Mainyu is a, quote, Amesha Spenta. But if you define Amesha Spentas as the qualities of the divine, then I think you have to include Spenta Mainyu. And in many of the later Avestan texts, they talk of the 7, which would have to include Spenta Mainyu. So the 7 characteristics are a beneficial way of being, Spenta Mainyu. Now, spenta has been translated differently. I've looked at all the translations I could find, both by eminent linguists and by practicing Zoroastrians and by priests of our religion. The only definition that fits every use of spenta in the Gathas is beneficial. So I have opted for beneficial, the beneficial way of being, spenta manu, which is the true, correct, wholly good order of existence, Asha Vahishta. Now, I've been asked, did spenta manu come first? Did it generate Asha Vahishta? There is some evidence in the Gathas that it did. There is in Yasna 43, but I think it both generates and is the beneficial, the true correct order of existence, an order of existence which is beneficial. That's how you get Asha Vahishta, good, the superlative degree of good. Vahishta is most good. So then you have Asha Vahishta, the true order of existence, its comprehension, Vahumana, its embodiment in thought, word, and action, which is spenta armaiti. Here again, linguists, professional linguists, vary greatly in how they translate spenta armaiti. But as Professor Insler's teacher, Tima, pointed out, most of these translations are not qualities of the divine. They only pertain to humans. See, the qualities of the divine are also the path to the divine. So you do find in the Gathas man using these qualities as a good way of life. But you have to find a definition that fits every use of spenta armaiti in the Gathas, and the embodiment of truth in thought, word, and action fits every use of spenta armaiti in the Gathas. So that's the next one, spenta armaiti, the embodiment of truth, the beneficial embodiment of truth in thought, word, and action. Good rule is the next. And this is a rule over oneself first, which generates good rule in our social units. And then comes, and these 5 qualities man has imperfectly. And the last 2, man is capable of getting, capable of attaining, which is harvatat, wholeness, completeness, and ameritat, non-deathness. So those are the 7 characteristics of Ahuramazda. And it says, this sounds like Buddhist 7 levels of enlightenment. Any similarities? Well, not really. I think we have the first 5 qualities imperfectly. And as we continue, as Sohaila said, to think and make good choices, we more and more incrementally attain the qualities of the divine until we attain them completely. So I do not think that there are 7 levels of enlightenment. It is more the last 2 are attained when we have perfected ourselves. And until then, we're moving along. We're not there yet, but we'll get there. Tanaz, yes, I agree with Sohaila. There you are, Sohaila. I believe our religion is of free will. I agree. That is one of the foundations of Zarathustra's teachings. In fact, the freedom to choose, as I pointed out a few sessions earlier, is a condition precedent. It's a requirement of spiritual development, because it is only when we choose, experience the consequences of our choices, and not only earned experiences, also unearned experiences, together with the help we give each other, mutual loving help, that is what enables spiritual growth. Let's see, Esfandiar. Then there is the Genesis in Bible, where God created 6 things in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. What you showed also had 6 creations. Can this be transference from one religion to the other? I agree. Esfandiar, I agree. You know, we have to not condemn the Pahlavi writers, because you have to put yourself in their position. They lived in a horribly aggressive environment. And it wasn't like, you know, we will practice our religion, you practice your religion type thing at all. It was a continuing effort to proselytize. And in that kind of environment, you are bound to absorb some of the teachings of the other religious paradigm. And I'll give you one example, which Esfandiar, you know, it illustrates how correct Esfandiar is. There is a text in India called the Kisse-i Sanjan, which is supposed to be an account of the early settlement of Zoroastrians in India. And in the Kisse-i Sanjan, it's one of the things it says, and this is not my translation, this is the translation by an eminent non-Zoroastrian linguist, but it's a very good translation from what I can gather. It says, man is born evil. We all have the sin of Adam. There is no Adam in any of our ancient texts. That is totally alien to Zarathustra's thinking. It is totally alien to his thinking that we are born sinful, corrupt. You know, that simply is alien. We are born with divine qualities, imperfect, but divine qualities and their opposites. So that gives you an example, an idea of how difficult it must have been for the Pahlavi writers to withstand the forces of other religious paradigms. So yes, Esfandiar, I agree with you. Farshi to everyone. Dear Dina, does Zarathustra distinguish between the existence and life? I might be alive, but not living a life. Oh, good thing, good point, living a life. You know, that is interesting. I know Dr. Jahanian, there's one verse, you know, which talks about the 2 Manus created life and non-life. And that has been interpreted in a lot of different ways. Dr. Jahanian has interpreted that to mean that non-life means living a life that is not worthy, not worthwhile, you know, not living a life that is good. So it's possible. Now, does Zarathustra distinguish? Well, the words he uses, the Avestan words, are all, quote, life words, except for this one, non-life, you know. So I think that is more an insight, which I think is a very good insight, but I cannot say that I have seen Zarathustra distinguish it by using different Avestan words. So. Right, Farshid, I might be alive and not living a life. Very well put. Manik Bhujwala, everything in the material world has at least 2 possible uses. A knife invented to cut food, but it can be used to hurt someone. That is the nature of things in the material world. With our freedom to choose, we can create good or evil in how we choose. Very well said, Manik. You're quite right. I agree with you. Gyaki Dadchanji, the perfecting process requires making the right choices. Only human beings seem to have the privilege to make moral choices. So before humans came on the scene, did the process of perfection, did it not take place? You know, Kaki, I must, in one sense, respectfully disagree with you. I don't think humans are the only life forms capable of making choices. I'll tell you a story based on my own experience, but before I do, integrity requires that I first tell you that scientists now are more and more are engaging in tests, experiments, you know, with proper scientific structures. The tests are structured in a proper way and are discovering that other life forms and plants make choices. I, unfortunately, when I don't work with something all the time, I tend to forget where I saw it. But I think it was one of those nature things you see on TV where it showed lupins protected other plants when danger threatened by giving off chemical odors or chemicals of one sort or another. And the other plants then were in a position to increase whatever acrid substance they produced to drive away insects that were preying on them. So more and more scientists are coming to the same conclusion. But let me tell you a personal story. We had a little mongrel dog, and I loved it dearly and it loved me dearly, but it had one very bad habit. It liked to mark its territory in the way dogs mark their territory. And one day I just lost it. And I got so mad, I gave him a little whack on his back. I didn't hurt him, but certainly I hurt his pride. Well, he loved me too much to bite me. But I was cooking dinner and he went up to our bedroom. He didn't wet on my husband's pillow. He wet on my pillow just to let me know that, hey, this is not going to work. Now, think about it. First, he made a choice not to bite me, and that was generated by love. Second, he was so mad at me, he wanted to get even. He wanted revenge. So he went up and he made a mess, not on my husband's pillow, but on my pillow, because he knew that my pillow with a big mess on it would really aggravate me. So there was planning, there was thinking, and there was choice. So we live urban lives. We are so divorced from animals that we tend not to see how they live their lives. But Zarathustra lived in a rural community. His culture, they raised horses and cattle, and he would have been in daily contact with animals and their reactions. And so I, with the deepest respect, Kaki, and friendship, I don't agree that humans are the only ones who make moral choices. Zareen. Oh, hello, Zareen. How are you? I came late, so if you've already addressed that, please don't worry. Firstly, it's great to see and hear you again here also. I was wondering, how firmly do you believe in the law of Asha? And do we see it functioning in this world in our lifetime itself? Will justice prevail? Does good beget good? If you make moral choices, do you see the outcomes in this world in our lifetime? Does that happen in life? Zareen, that is a really, really good question.
Thank you.
Anyone who has made a tough choice that was good and caught hell for it, understands that it's not automatic. Every time you do something good, it doesn't always come back to you in the short run. But Zarathustra teaches, and having lived for 81 years, I now believe that in the long run, because it matches my experiences, in the long run, you cannot prosper, you cannot be happy if you are not in sync with the true, correct, good order of existence, which is Asha. So Zareen, my answer is, and I can only answer for myself, well, actually Zarathustra himself says so, that yes, the law of Asha, not in the short run. In the short run, you may experience hardship, hurt, suffering, recrimination, contempt, all kinds of adverse consequences. But in the long run, we cannot be happy, we cannot prosper unless we are in sync with Asha. So yes, Zareen, I do believe that. And I believe I see that in the Gathas. If you want the evidence, there is on my website, there is in part 1, there is a chapter, Happiness, Prosperity, Joy. And I lay out quotations from the Gathas, which address this question. So it's not just me, Zarathustra also believes it. Esfandiar, I'm so glad
Thank you very much.
questions. Does Gatha discuss conversions to Zoroastrianism? I know that those that spread the good word are considered one of the 3 important forces up there together with Asha. Sorry, I do not remember the second one. Also, if this is true, which I know it is, good for you. Isn't it a sin for us not to allow others to convert to our religion? Well, I agree with you. Sin has a biblical connotation. So let's talk of wrongdoing. How can we ever deny access to the truth or to what we believe to be the truth to anyone? In the Gathas, Zarathustra repeatedly expresses his wish to spread the religion and he doesn't talk of religion, to spread his envisionment to all the living. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. The later texts repeatedly talk about it. Even giving credit where it's due, even after the Arab invasion of Iran, when Zoroastrians lived with horrendous persecution and any kind of acceptance into the religion would have meant death. They had the courage. They didn't openly allow acceptance, but they had the courage to stick with the original belief. And if you would like to see the evidence, there is a chapter on my website in part 1, a teaching for all mankind. And I lay out the evidence from the Gathas, from the later texts, from the Corday Avesta prayers, from the decisions of religious authorities other than the religious authorities in India. But the religious authorities in Iran, even after the Arab invasion, can you imagine the courage that took? The courage and the commitment to the religion. I just am lost in admiration. So if you're interested, it's all laid out there. And if you want, email me. I will send you a PDF copy of that particular chapter, so you don't have to go hunting through my website for that chapter. So Esfandiar, please do email me and I'll send you a PDF copy. Okay, so, oh, Esfandiar, giving credit where due, Dastur Miniature Homji, whom I dearly, dearly loved, he said in his Chicago lectures, and that took a lot of courage also, he said, if you deny the light to others, you will be the first to stumble in the dark. Think about that. Okay, Kersi, dear Dina, if Pahlavi tracts are not to be critically viewed because of the conditions of those generations faced, what of their distortion or degradation of the sublime concepts of the Gathas? Kersi, that is an excellent question. When I said we have to be understanding, I meant let us not condemn the writers. They did the best they could, but we should always, always, where Pahlavi texts differ or younger Avestan texts differ from the Gathas have to take priority, and we should not be afraid of critical thinking. But just let us do our critical thinking with love in our hearts for those priests who tried to keep the traditions that they were aware of alive. They were faulty, some of them were very beautiful. There is a lovely quotation in Dinkard 6, which is supposed to be the collection of Zoroastrian sages. And I don't have it memorized. It was translated by Shaul Shaked. I don't have the exact words, but I can give you a paraphrase of it. It talks about character and love. It says, and bear in mind the circumstances under which these priests lived. It said, character is love of mankind. I kind of wish he had extended it to more than mankind, but it's a good first step. And he says, for it would be impossible for the demons within to gain control of a human being if that human being has love for others. It's a lovely, I wish I could have given it to you exactly, but so Kersi, to get back to your point, absolutely, we have to be critical. We have to do critical thinking, and where we see teachings that are not in accord with the Gathas, of course, we should say this is not in accord with the Gathas. All I'm saying is, let us do our criticism with love and understanding, that's all. You notice the quotation I made about Ahura created, blah, 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 and fire was infused in oil. Well, the first part was obviously, you could see, as Esfandiar pointed out, the influence of another religious paradigm. But that writer tried to express an earlier tradition that he had been taught, that fire was infused in everything. So see, we can't just condemn wholesale. There's a lot of beautiful stuff in the Pahlavi text, and there's a lot of horrible, horrible, junky stuff. Let's take what is good and leave the rest behind. It's in every religion you'll find that. Beram Pastakia, hello Beram. Dina, coming back to Keki's question, there is a distinction between choices and moral choices, is there not? So while plants and animals can and do make choices, are those moral choices? It's a good question, Beram. I don't think on the state of our present knowledge, we can give either a definitive yes or no answer. I'm inclined, I can just give you my thinking. I'm inclined to think that every life form makes choices, moral choices. They just do it with different tools from humans. And their choices might be different from ours. They may frame their choices differently from us. But based on what I have seen and I have to say felt, I think every living thing makes choices, moral, what we call, if by moral you mean choices between what is right and wrong, good and evil, I think every living thing makes it. Where I'm not so sure is, do rocks make choices? Does water make choices? You know, I'm not prepared to go that far, but I don't know. There's a lot I don't know, and I think we should all be aware and humble enough to know that there may be a lot out there that we are not aware of. Okay. Farshid, how will justice prevail where most of the people on this planet believe in pleasing their own God and only their own God serves the justice? That's a good question, Farshid. And I don't say, I have to tell you, even when I compliment my grandchildren, I always do it truthfully. So if I say it's a good question, I believe it's a good question. You guys just have good questions, that's all. Okay. Farshid, I am not wise enough to be able to say how the law of consequences works. But Zarathustra teaches that everything we do comes back to us. The good we do and also the bad we do and the in-between. Now, how it comes back to us, when it comes back to us, I can give you my opinion. I think it happens over many lifetimes, over a long, long period of time. And it has been said, well, how can you believe in reincarnation? Because if the good you do comes back to you, you don't remember what bad stuff you did. So, you know, you don't benefit by any kind of recollection. But my view is, if you remembered the bad, that's not the object is not punishment. If you remembered the bad stuff you did, you'd be so busy excusing yourself and trying to distinguish what you did and thinking, well, this consequence is way too severe for what I did, that you would not learn the lesson. The object is to increase understanding. So when we experience what is bad, whether it is earned that we do not remember from a past life or whatever, or unearned, it's the experience itself that enlarges our understanding. So I'm a firm believer that wisdom hooks everyone, Zoroastrian, non-Zoroastrian, you know. I hate to use God because that has so much baggage. The divine, let's say the divine hooks everyone in his own way, in his own time. But he will hook us all, because if we're part of one existence, unless each one of us makes it, he doesn't make it, or it doesn't make it, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Oh, good thinking, Isfandiar. He says, definitely I will email you. I welcome that. Almighty. Thank you, Dina. As always, I will write to, after this session, I may have to sign off soon for the prayer Zoom at 6:30. Perfectly all right. So, Hela, do you send recordings? Please, can you tell me where to find them? I see you on March 13th again. Good job, Almighty. Thank you for coming. And if you have to leave early, please don't worry about it. Manik, In the Herbadistan, according to Professor Almut Hintze from SOAS, every family was suggested to have one child become a priest and spread the teachings. And the family that adopted the teachings should do the same regardless of male or female, and that way to spread the word. Manik, I have to tell you that although I have read the Herbadistan, Arpadistan and Nirangistan, which is the different way of saying it, I do not remember that, but I like it. Well, I would not say every family must have a child who becomes a priest, but I love the idea of spreading the teachings and regardless of male or female. So yeah, that is some support for proselytizing. In fact, in that chapter I was telling you about, A Religion for All Mankind, the Council of Mobeds from Tehran, in their opinion, when Joseph Peterson's Navjot was being done, they quoted from the Arpadistan and Nirangistan that the religion belongs to everyone, that everyone should be welcome. I don't remember the exact quotation right now, unfortunately, because I haven't seen it for a while. But thank you, Manik. Thank you for bringing that up. Bahumata, Jaru, my dear Dina, listening to you is always so wonderful and inspiring. Jaru, you're going to give me a fat head. Thank you so very much, with much respect. Karishma, okay. Well, Karishma, thank you. I appreciate it. And it's always good to be appreciated. So thank you very much. Well, I think that is the last question. So I will leave it to Manaz. If you want to end, does anyone else have anything?
Yeah, I have only